welcome. Tonight, spirited discussion ahead. If it's anything like the discussion before the show. We're going to start looking at the world from a liberal point of view. So let's start first with introductions.
Christine Crane from Milford, member of the Democratic Party at Milford, and drinking liberally.
I'm Glenn Wyke. I am the treasurer of the Milford Democratic Town Committee.
I am Rand Barthel. I live in Mendon. I am a member of the Mendon Democratic Town Committee, and I'm also a member of the 350 Mass Climate Action movement.
Lauren Wilton, former chair of the Milford Democratic Town Committee, active with Lawyers for Good Government, and I sit on the board of the Disability Law Center.
Question that I've never asked. What does the Milford Democratic Committee do?
And we just sit around and drink beer, really.
No, but I mean, I assume there's a Republican town committee too, but I've never
I wonder
asked.
what they drink.
We're a hub for organizing in town. When people need doors knocked in the town or phone calls made to constituents, then we are part of that.
Is it all local, Glenn, or is it national?
No, it's all local. You know, you've got the National the convention this week, which we're going to be
We'll
talking
talk
about. That's the federal national
Right.
Democratic Party. You've got Mass Dems, which is the state Democratic Party. And then you have all of the towns have their own Democratic town committees. And we try to get like-minded people elected at the local level and at the state level.
We try to support each other across town lines.
Yeah.
And we also try to be good citizens in town. I mean, when they had the Celebrate Milford, we had a booth trying to do voter registration, nonpartisan, just people registering to vote, getting people active. We tried to have some things that were coming up in the legislature or whatever, get people awareness about that. So, what else? We marched in the parade,
canvassed.
try to do some little PR for ourselves and, get people active and involved.
So it makes sense if I'm running for the rep, the Brian Murrays of the world, the Becca Roushes of the world. They're running to represent our town
Yep.
and many more, but
Yeah, they reach out
Right.
to us, and then we're the ones,
Right.
we're the boots on the ground,
And
knocking
all
on
of
the
this-
doors, making
yeah.
the phone calls.
And all of this applies in Mendon as well. We do the same kind of stuff.
well, I
We're just
assume it's
smaller.
the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Mendon Democratic
Right.
Town Committee does the same.
There's a standout in one town. We'll let the other towns know. Anybody wants to join us and try to be a little reciprocity and help each other out.
So how far does it go? Does Elizabeth Warren, statewide, come to you for support?
We've never had
Her
Elizabeth
campaign would
Warren.
reach out, I think. I know we've talked to people in her campaign.
A lot of us were active in the Ed Markey campaign,
Yes.
and the primary campaign where he had to get past Joe Kennedy.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, back when he ran against Ed Markey.
Did Joe run?
I think he was at the Johnny Jack's. I had breakfast with him.
Yeah.
No,
How did
I
that go?
supported him.
He's nice. He
because
was a nice guy.
He's been on the show a number of times. Before he went off to be ambassador, he came on to give us an update. But I don't remember a big campaign. But it could just be that I wasn't paying attention.
Maybe. That happens.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a blood feud there for a couple months, and then it was over.
That was surprised me
What?
that it was so quick between Markey and Kennedy.
Well, I don't know if there was a long time between when he announced the campaign and then the primary. And once the primary was over, that was it. So Markey got the nod and went on from there.
Well, convention just ended.
Mm-hmm.
I dare say this shortened primary battle is done. Now comes the election. But we're sitting here basically in September, and you've got 2 months.
And we're feeling good. We are
Yeah.
feeling
By and
Very
large, we're-
hopeful.
We are way in a way better place than we were
2 months ago, yeah.
2 months
Yeah.
ago,
Definitely.
Why?
because
The energy, the enthusiasm, people coming out that have not come out before to get involved with the campaign. I've gotten calls and people reaching out.
Yeah.
There was a collective.
Seems like there was a quick shift in energy. That
Oh yeah,
Very
definitely.
quick.
Yeah.
Well, it was at the end of June when the debate happened, And that's when there was a lot of turmoil in the Democratic Party about whether Biden could do his job or not, whether he could fulfill his function as a candidate. And, the primary job of the candidate is to communicate a vision for what he wants to do in his next term. And Joe just seemed very befuddled, and also looking back mostly on what he had done so far, which is all well and good, because he has done some good things, had some really substantial legislation that got passed, even with a thin majority. But people want to know what you're going to do, and he was just having a real difficult time communicating that.
Well, and you have to be able to convey in your presentation of yourself that you are up to doing it.
That too.
And he really didn't convince a lot of people that he was up to another
But
4 years.
what confused me was the discussion was, is he up to running the campaign and becoming president again? This is the guy with his finger on the nuclear trigger.
Mm-hmm.
You could say the same
Yeah.
about Trump. That's just scary too. So.
Well, running
Well-
a campaign is very different than actually running the country. I mean, running the campaign, you're on the planes, you're talking to 1 million people. But I mean, the bottom line is, you don't. Not to sound ageist, okay, but I watched that debate and I supported Joe Biden and I supported him until he stepped down. But I watched that with a sinking feeling in my stomach because I was like, if he can't hold his own now against this guy, the other guy, who's got so many vulnerabilities, we're in trouble. We are in deep, deep, deep trouble. And anybody can have an off night, and he ended up getting.
That
COVID.
wasn't an off night. That was
It was indicative of a
Titanic.
bigger issue, and
Right.
so the people in the party who came out, publicly. Personally, I would have rather people talk to him privately, and maybe they did. Maybe they had
think
to
they
do
did.
some public shaming in order for him to step down. But the bottom line is, he did the right thing. He came out and said, I love the job, but I love the country more. And I think, like we were saying earlier, I think history is going to look back on his presidency kindly. I think he was the right guy at the right time. And when he left, that was the right thing to do now. And Kamala is just unifying the party in a way that is just, I think, it's our race to lose, I think.
In my opinion, I'd like to believe that the decision on when he stepped down was very strategic because it was after the Republican convention.
Right after.
They've already picked their VP.
Right.
They're running, and they got this thing, and then they got side-blinded or
Yeah.
blindsided.
Quite a piece of jujitsu, that.
Oh, yeah.
And they were crying about rule violations. I read the rules. There's no rule violation whatsoever. And if you made the mistake of picking Vance, I mean, the guy can't even walk into a donut shop and have a conversation with people without being all stiff and weird. Like Tim Walz is so good. And then even better, Kamala Harris picked the very best vice presidential candidate that she could have ever run with. He's awesome.
He's very real. And haven't we lost sight? We have these candidates and we put them up on this pedestal and they have to become all this in a bag of chips. And Tim Walz kind of grounds us a little bit. And I like the fact that he just feels comfortable and natural.
You need to know how to hook up your car battery. Just call me.
Yeah.
It's
Tim
like-
Walz is really like the dream candidate across the board. Like he has military service. He was a teacher, a middle-class guy. He knows what it's like to struggle. He was
a hunter.
Yep. Was involved with the LGBTQ alliance
In
at
the
his school,
90s?
like in the
Right.
90s, which is insane.
That was some courage back
Yeah,
then.
Yeah.
no kidding.
A football coach. You know,
Family man. I
he
mean,
just checks all the
IVF?
boxes.
right,
And he seems to be a really nice guy. I haven't seen anybody have a bad word to say about him, which is unusual when you're in politics that
Right.
long.
yeah.
Well,
that-
except for people who are really trying very, very hard and making themselves look silly doing it.
Yes,
Well,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
And yeah, they're doing things
So-
like questioning his military service and stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah.
people are just embarrassing
splitting hairs,
themselves.
I
You
know.
know, you just get over yourselves. He's a solid, good choice. And if that's indicative of what she's going to be as president, her very first decision or most important decision right now is picking her running mate, and I think she knocked it out of the park.
Do we know what she's going to be?
We don't.
No.
And not
I mean,
completely.
I've got
Now,
A basic issue, excuse me.
Yeah.
a minute. If you like what we've had for 3.5 years, then why is there a question?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, she's going to be her own person, right?
Is she?
Well, of course she is. She's no
Hasn't she
longer.
been?
She's no longer under Biden's.
she's had to be a loyal vice president, which
Right.
is a
All
role
vice
where you,
presidents are like
No,
that.
I guess what I mean is
you
we've had
subver-
4 years
submerge yourself.
of Harris-Biden.
Right.
Before that, we had 4 years of Trump.
So-
Isn't that really?
Or Trump and Pence. Remember the guy they were going to hang?
Right,
Just
Yeah.
who didn't support him this time
and doesn't
around.
now, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy.
Pence-
Don't forget him.
Well,
So, but if like all of us here, you would prefer a bowl of warm vomit to Donald Trump, then there's no problem. It's
But
fine.
Rand- I'd prefer not to pay what I'm paying.
What do you mean?
Pay what?
Gasoline.
Gasoline is by OPEC. It has nothing to do with the presidency. They control
We
that.
say that, but
But
yet I
it's
remember
true.
reading saying if we go from being a net exporter to a net importer, gasoline prices will go up.
We're not importing though. We're exporting.
Not as much.
We are. We've generated more oil under Biden than has ever been
That's
generated
a fact.
before.
That's a fact.
Now, as a
And I
climate
can show you the
activist,
numbers
I
if
don't
you-
view that as a
Yeah, I
good
would
thing.
like to see that
But-
because I didn't
We
read
don't wanna
that
talk
at
about
all.
fracking either.
Yes.
Do not want to talk about
We
that.
we have and honestly,
Well, we do
some
wanna
of us
talk
are
about
very
fracking,
upset
just from a
by the
policy
fact
point
that
of view.
we're generating more oil now. But we actually, in a lot of ways, we had to because OPEC said they were going to cut back on the
Yes.
amount of oil they're going to generate.
So they can raise the price.
So they can raise the price, and so they can squeeze us.
Yeah.
And they would rather have Trump in office.
Sure.
Russia would rather have Trump in office. China would rather have Trump in office. And so, what are they going to do? They're going to do everything they can to squeeze us, to make it harder for
look
the
bad.
Democratic
Do you
president to
believe
function.
Russia would rather have Trump?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
definitely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why?
Do you?
Because
will-
Trump
I'm
doesn't
not
care
sure.
about
Trump
Ukraine
will let them
at all.
Trump will let them. He said it himself. He'll let them do whatever the hell they want.
Trump is entirely
That-
transactional.
he
As
is
long
com-
as it works
he
in
doesn't
his
care.
best interest,
He doesn't
will
care
do
about this
whatever. He
country.
doesn't
That's right.
care
No.
about people.
Trump wants to
care
pull us
about-
out of NATO.
Did he really, or did he want to use it as a bargaining chip to
No.
get them to
No.
pay
He
more
wants
money?
to pull us out of
He's
NATO.
hated NATO all along. He has always felt that had a preference for an isolationist policy.
There was part of me that
And-
when I read that we were paying 70% of the NATO budget, didn't feel that was fair.
Well, there was a time early in the days of NATO when the Europeans were flat on their back from World War II.
I'm talking the last 10 years.
Now, of course, yes, it would be, and they actually are increasing their budgets. They're going up.
Little bits. We're still paying the majority.
Oh, I'm not sure what the actual stats are, but it's
Does
clear
it
to me
depend on the
that
size of the country and the GDP?
It does
Well,
matter
it's the
that.
percentage. They want them all to be up to, what, 2%?
Yeah, it's like
2%.
two or two and a half.
and
something
some
like
of
that.
them are at 2%, some of them are not yet.
Okay.
I suspect that concern about whether they can rely on the United States will probably cause more of them to go up.
Well, I think
because
Putin has helped bring those budgets up more
he
than
sure
anybody.
has. I mean, actually, he has rescued NATO from
Itself.
heading into an era of irrelevance, and but from everything Trump has said and the attitude he has displayed towards our service people who fought in World War II and in World War I,
Losers.
and he has contempt for all of it, and he will not. He will sell our allies down the river because he actually has this weird infatuation with other autocrats and other dictators because he wants to be one himself.
He wants to be admired and
I want to
loved
be
and-
young, thin, and have hair.
I know.
It ain't going to happen.
Well, it's not going to happen, but in the world of a megalomaniac like Donald Trump,
True.
these kinds of things are allowed to control what you do.
But the emperor has no clothes anymore.
Yeah.
Because it was almost like we've had like a sudden awakening, and everybody seems to be, I mean, there's going to be a small percentage of people that there's just no convincing or changing. But I think the average person is just looking at him very differently than they looked at him in 2016. They're not looking at him now like, oh, a successful businessman. They're looking at him as a guy who, he's broke. He's got a whole bunch of lawsuits, criminal and civil, and he's losing.
And he's selling his
His
merch
although
to make money to pay off his legal fees and.
Well, the
curious,
Republican
'cause he
Party is
doesn't
paying for
usually
his
pay his
legal
lawyers.
fees.
Yeah, he's not.
And they're getting disbarred by the dozens.
He's not this celebrity from Celebrity Apprentice or whatever that people fell in love with. He's this crazy guy who can't hold a thought during his speeches.
Can't complete a
who
sentence.
is a complete chaos agent. You never know what he's going to do from one day to the next. Is incompetent.
People
Incredibly
are tired
incompetent.
of it. They're just so tired. And when here we are. Now we're all Democrats, but we were more than happy to recognize what we witnessed when we saw Biden's lapses during the debate.
Right.
Watch any of the Trump rallies. Watch how he just stops talking for 21 seconds at a time and is just like staring into space. Watch him just rant
And why
about.
is that not broadcast more in the media?
Well,
It just feels.
There's a
as
double
if-
standard.
Of course there is.
Because there
Because
is
the
no.
oligarchs that own the
the
media.
bar is
Everybody
very
has
high.
priced in the fact that Trump is an idiot.
Yeah.
But no, I
in the
get a
media.
kick out of it because when we do the conservative view, all they complain about is the media bias towards the Dems.
How
Well,
so?
Of course, because they've been fed that for decades. But if you actually look at the analysis of how these two candidates, I'll give you an example. Trump has tried to talk about policy recently, and all he does is criticize whatever Biden or Harris has done. He doesn't actually articulate a policy. He just says, "Oh, I'll cut your electric bills by 50%." He
But
won't say
no-
how he does it.
Right.
He doesn't care about any policy. But then Kamala Harris comes out and gives several substantive policies that she wants to enact about housing, creating 3 million more units, dealing with price gouging, things like that. And then the paper will say Harris is light on substance in her policy discussion, and it's a joke. Like, are you kidding me? The other guy can't keep one thought together. He can't articulate a policy if he wanted to.
And you want to know why? Because the people that are actually running the policy behind the Republican Party, and it's in a book, Project 25 is a huge written policy of what will
downloaded
happen
it.
if Trump gets in. And Trump tried to be like, I don't know. Yeah, he didn't know Giuliani either. Please, he's lying, okay? All of the people that wrote that thing were
all in his
either
cabinet.
attached to his campaign or attached to his administration when he was president. That's
his
why he
stuff.
doesn't talk about policy, because if he actually talks about the policies that are contained in Project 2025, they're not popular with the
Let's
American
get
people.
rid of NOAA with all the hurricanes coming and climate
Let's
change.
get rid of the Department of Education.
Oh, yeah.
Let's have a national abortion ban. These are things that people do not want, and they don't care about that stuff. They care about stuff like how much does it cost for groceries? How much does it cost for housing? That's the stuff people care about. Health care. Why is insurance all locked up in our health care? So, yeah.
So I just wanted to bring it back to the convention a little bit, because I thought it was interesting how Kamala did her acceptance speech and what she said and what she didn't say. She went through a bio of herself, and she formally accepted the party's nomination. Then she began her attack on Trump, and the word she chose for him was that he is unserious, which she didn't call him a pathological liar the way Bernie Sanders always does. She didn't call him a morally bankrupt creep, which he obviously is. There are all kinds of things she didn't say about him.
He's
She
also
called him-
financially bankrupt. But
He
go
is, yeah, but that's another thing. Yeah, his money is all smoke and mirrors. But she said he's unserious, and here she is. And so what she's setting up is a comparison between herself she is a serious professional. She has worked her way up from nothing. She has gotten everything she has by earning it the old-fashioned way. She has done that by being really good at what she does. And she was conveying all of that in everything about her presentation, right down to the dark navy power suit, and she's contrasting that with Trump as somebody who just isn't all there.
It's a joke. But getting
And
back to what you
So,
were saying
and
about
so
media
then
bias.
to say a little more, she didn't. This was a rather conservative speech that she gave. She did not talk about let's build Medicare for all. She didn't talk about let's
Nothing
spend
radical.
$16 billion trillion on climate change. She didn't do that. So that says something about who she was aiming her message at.
Yeah.
But what is her message? I mean, first of all, you say everybody. Well, as far as I look, half this country is split. There's not a 20% change. You know, I see differences of 2%, 5%, which says whether you like Kamala Harris or not, at least 45% of the country's behind her.
Al, the
polls are
poll
you
said
looking
that
at?
Hillary Clinton was going to win. And
Thank
getting
you.
back to the bias, because I know that was important that you wanted to bring up,
Yeah.
and you said the conservatives brought it up. Now, I have mad respect for the New York Times, and so I'm not going to be sitting here, and all the journalists and everything, but I don't know what's going on with the editorial board over there, but I just think it's bizarre that the whole time that Biden was president, Biden had this wonderful success. What did Biden actually do, though, with blah, blah, blah? They could never say anything positive about
Right.
him, and they always turned it around to his age.
Right.
How is Biden's age affected?
They mentioned it about
It's-
Trump's age.
It's kind
have
of like
they
butter
once
emails.
said, this guy seems like he's off his nut? Do they ever say, well, he's now the oldest person ever to run, or anything like that?
Bezos
No.
owns the Washington Post, right? And who owns the New York Times? Whatever.
Zoltzberger.
You know, so we got all these oligarchs.
these
that
old
they're
billionaire
biased,
white
and
men.
they don't want a progressive administration because they're going to be taxed, and they don't
Yeah,
want
but a
that.
lot of people still read the Times. I'll admit,
I read the Times.
I get the Times delivered to my house every day. It's my lunchtime read. The Globe is my nighttime read.
I'm not saying people don't read it. The
I
point
read the
is
Globe,
what
too.
they're broadcasting
I
to.
have-
I try to
But
do.
it's the
have
last
lowered
bit
my
of
reading
But I-
investigative
but I-
reporting.
the
I-
Guardian,
But so there,
which is,
I've discovered the Philadelphia Inquirer.
and then the Guardian is independent, and
Will Bunch is really good.
but I don't want us to be like, oh, the media stinks, blah, 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 because that's a trope that Republicans have been trying to sell for a long
Right.
time. Oh, the liberal media, blah, 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 Sarah Palin, all of that. We don't have local media at all,
No.
which
Yeah,
is
our,
awful.
our critique of the media is a bit different. We're not saying that a lot of the problems are about industry consolidation and the fact that we have a very small number of oligarchs who control what we read as far as news is concerned.
Or
And-
see.
Right.
Or see. And so those oligarchs are not willing to talk about climate change. They're not willing to talk about Citizens United and how it's corrupting our country. So it's definitely an issue that has to be solved by government intervention.
they're not fake, but they're biased.
If you look at the New York Times, I can't say that they're right-leaning. If I was to paint a picture, I'd say they're more left-leaning than
You
right-leaning.
don't think you're biased at all yourself a little?
I
Given
think-
your perspective, which you tend to be more right-leaning, so you're going to say that. And if I were to read it, I'd probably say, yeah, it's more right-leaning and it's more biased.
Could
to the
be.
right.
I think it's both. I think the editorial board is very conservative right now. I don't know what it was like in the past. Maybe it was more left-leaning, but right now it definitely is not liberal at all.
I don't read the editorial
Yeah,
side of
it's-
it. I
and
read
it-
it for
And
the
it shows up
news.
as much in what they choose to cover and
Well, right, yeah, it's
and
not
pay
just the
attention to
editorials. I'm
as
talking about
it
the
is-
board. I'm talking about the editorial board. So,
Yeah.
but I think what is really important is I don't think that we should be like bashing all of legitimate media, the Post, the Globe, the New York Times. These are established, publications.
They are what they are.
Because we've got people on social media that are posting raw media, blah, blah, these crazy things. I think it was a kid who talked to me today on Facebook who said that only 10% of the planet know the truth. These people are reading stuff.
Where
you
are
know,
they coming up with that data?
They're reading stuff on the internet. There needs to be government regulation of the internet so
But, you
that
know, what
Was
makes me
truth
laugh,
capitalized?
yes.
Lauren, I bring up, I heard this on Fox News. Your face goes into contortion.
Because it's a propaganda channel that is not
It's
a
not
legitimate
news.
news
But that
source.
exact view will be CNN. If I bring it up on the conservative view, the exact same words come out if I say CNN.
CNN is garbage right now too. They made a conscious decision in the last 2 years to be more independent. And as a result, that's why we have right-wing extremists getting spotlighted in town halls and things on CNN.
Yeah, Jake
The
Tapper
last
gives
debate-
guys interviews and doesn't,
No,
when
there's
they're
no-
spewing lies 100
No,
miles an
no
hour, he
fact
doesn't
checking.
say anything about
Zero.
it.
I got to admit, I start off in the morning listening to Fox News. Halfway to when I get near Route 9, I flip over to CNN. And when I get tired of both of them, I go to the BBC.
And you
The
want
BBC
Jake,
is the best choice.
Yeah,
in
you
the
might
world.
actually
The
want to just
BBC
stay at
seems
the
to be
BBC.
most balanced.
yeah, Jake Tapper on CNN has always been awful. He also platformed Richard Spencer, if you know who he is. He's a Nazi.
Yeah,
He's the
He
guy who
said,
publicly
he's
got
part of
punched
the
in
new
the
right.
face.
We
He's a-
have to listen to the new
He's
right.
a blow-dried
He's a Nazi.
Yeah.
But
Tapper interviewed him. You won't see him do that with some left-wing, new left-wing figure that is
Because
coming
we're
up.
due for the Nazis to come to Milford in 4 years.
Oh, they're already
Well,
here.
they're
baby.
like the
They're already
No, but
here.
cicadas
about
or
every 8
something.
years,
They
they
come out
come
of the
through.
ground.
because I see their fecal matter in my mailbox. Their magazine, I think it's called The Crusader or something.
Yeah.
And I pray that nobody pays attention to them. So
Okay.
they'll just take their garbage and move on and leave us alone.
I think we talked about that before.
We did before
Yeah.
because a person in Milford took them on, and you're sitting there saying, no, that's what they want. They want attention.
Sure.
It's
Right.
like feeding a stray cat. The more you feed them, the more they're going to be around.
Kind of like
But
Trump.
also, if you don't show that the town opposes them, then that's a recruiting tool for them.
I agree with
And they
Glenn.
have been recruiting these white nationalists, the Nazis, and other various groups have been growing over the last several years.
And Trump gave him a public nod, a national public nod from the President of the United States. After Charlottesville, oh, there's good people on both
There's
sides.
good people.
On both sides. Dude, no.
No.
Nazis are bad, period. Millions of people lost their lives thanks to the Nazis in World War II. And all of a sudden, we're going to be like, oh, no, there's good people on both sides. They have a point there. No, they don't.
And Trump's right-hand man, Roger Stone, was definitely deeply embedded with the Proud Boys and other white supremacist groups, the Oath Keepers as well. These people
Kind of
are
acting as their liaison to those guys.
Yeah, and so this is not like some fringe stuff that is off in the corner somewhere.
And we can just ignore it
these
and go away.
These people have become mainlined in the Republican Party. They're active constituents
They have
of the
a seat at
Republican
the
And
Party.
table very clearly.
What's
And Trump is definitely their guy.
Right.
What's really important that I think needs to be pointed out is it's very easy for a white, suburban, middle-aged, no offense, man to ignore that kind
I'd like
of
to
stuff.
be middle-aged.
Here you go.
You're being kind.
But you know what I'm saying?
I'm
It's
watching it
easy for you
disappear
to
into the
ignore
rearview
that
mirror.
because it doesn't really, what they think doesn't really affect you because just your looks, your status, whatever, fits into what those people think is the American ideal. But other people who are more marginalized in this country and are not represented as well as they should be by government or otherwise, they need allies because those people are getting killed and isolated
harassed
and
and
bullied and
terrorized,
harassed. And now
yeah.
with the internet too, they're getting harassed not just at school, they're getting harassed. I mean, people that I like that I've known for years, they say things about transgender people that just, why do you care? Why do you care what
Isn't
anybody
that the
does?
real issue? You are not a lesbian. Would I care if you were? No. Would I still have the same opinion of you if you were? No. If you were trans, would I care? I mean, that's my fundamental.
But would you fight for them if somebody else was trying to prevent me from doing all my things that I want to do, which I'm not doing?
Or
but I'm
was
just
dumping
saying.
garbage on your lawn or something.
As
Well,
long
right?
as what you're doing doesn't affect everybody else, who cares?
See, the right has to use the technique of dividing people,
Divide and conquer.
and using, finding a marginalized group that they can beat up on and blame them for things to divide the populace.
They have to have a them.
And
us
that's
against
that's
them.
what they've been doing for the last several years. They call them groomers and pedophiles, and
Indoctrinating
and then
kids.
indoctrinating kids and all of this stuff, and it's incredibly harmful across the board. And they blame the left for this, when really this is about psychiatrists and doctors who have done research for decades and decades about this stuff, and they've come up with a way to treat this situation. And they just don't accept it. They don't accept gay people either, but they lost that conversation. And they want to open that conversation again. The Supreme Court would like to open
Clarence
it up.
wants
They'll
it
bring
to-
that back if they get a chance.
They will definitely roll it back. And I think
How
it's
could
part
they
of
roll
Project
it back?
2025.
How
How
could
could
they
they
roll
roll-
back Roe v.
Thank you.
Wade? They did. As a lawyer, sorry, I'm hitting the microphone. As a lawyer, I'm personally offended by that. I'm like, you just overturned 50 years of precedent just because you just disagree.
Mm-hmm.
What? That's not how it works. That's not how our process works. And Clarence said in his opinion that we should be opening up the door to look at other privacy rights that
Yeah, but I
were
thought that-
overbroad.
I laughed when I heard, and he's a Holy Cross boy, so, I'm sensitive to that.
Probably don't want to call him a boy, but yeah.
Well, a Holy Cross man, student.
Right.
I'm
You
a
go to
Holy Cross boy.
I'm Providence College. We're rivals.
You're friars.
Yeah.
But you sit there and say, when he started talking about we should look at contraception, I actually started laughing, saying, good, spend your time there. Try telling the population that sex is only to be had when you're procreating.
But
You're
take a
going to
look.
get really far. And the worst thing is,
But Al,
That's
what
what
business
J.D.
is it
Vance
of
is
yours?
saying. He's actually saying that stuff.
He's saying
Yeah.
that in all
You can't
seriousness.
have abortion, but we're not going to give you birth control either. Makes total sense.
but what
doesn't it?
business is, if I decide to have sex,
Mm-hmm.
what business is it of yours?
How would
It
they
isn't.
police that?
Or
But
who
he
you
doesn't.
wi-
But
you
he considers it his business because he thinks that he has an ideology that says that people who don't do the whole sex thing the way his ideology says they should are bad, and they need to be managed. And the power of the state needs to be used.
So are we going to
do
go
that.
back to then dictating the position we're going to take when we have sex with our spouse in the privacy of
Well,
our own
yeah,
home?
I mean,
I mean, that's really, because on the books, there
Sodomy,
were old books about what sodomy or
Yeah. Things
other-
you can't do. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
which is who
Which I
can't-
always found amazing to say, how do you police that?
Oh, well, thank you.
Well,
and then you get Trump
right.
getting up there in front of the Christians going, oh, you wonderful Christians, you beautiful Christians, if you all just, I'm a Christian too, and if you just come out and
Which is a
vote for
laugh.
me, you'll never have to vote again because it'll all be fixed. You'll never have to vote again because I'll be dictator and there'll never
Right.
be another presidential
I'll never
Yeah,
election.
but come
again."
on, Lauren.
What else did he mean?
How
what
would
else?
you, how else
Tell
would
me
you
what he
interpret
meant
that?
then.
Again, I could say I'm going to be young, thin, and have hair. What's the odds on that happening?
When
All right, I'm
someone's
gonna tell
running
you the
for
odds of what.
president says something like that, that means a lot more and a lot more impact than, oh, I'd like to be, 5'6" in a rocket. Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, we're
that has
just-
more meaning. Those words are meaningful when you're a candidate for president. That
not only
carries
that,
a lot of
not,
weight.
not only that,
Not just
he's
here, but in the
got-
world.
He's got this army of people who wrote Project 2025, and they are actually recruiting tens of thousands of foaming at the mouth ideologues to be their foot soldiers. They plan to actually implement this stuff, and
How?
it's all in the plan.
It's all in right.
It's
I'll
all in
send
the
it
plan.
to you.
The way it works is you go deep into the government and you fire all the people who you think will be
Independent
loyal,
Aligned with you.
will be loyal to law and the Constitution. You replace them with people who are personally loyal to Trump. And once you have that, you then just do what you want to do, and you do this. You get ready to do this beforehand, so that on day one, all Trump has to do is sign some pieces of paper, and off it goes. And
They
and
won't
you
have any
and
kind
you-
of rights.
But realistically, Trump's going to go away one way or another in 4 years.
No.
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 What do you
He's a
mean, no?
cancer on a,
So hold on one sec. One thing that hasn't been discussed
I
yet
mean,
is
the
that,
Almighty might tap him on the shoulder, but,
but the
God
Supreme
willing.
Court is
Failing
the
that.
tip of the spear
Well, the
right
Supreme
now.
Court is his legacy.
It's more than that. They're enacting Project 2025 now
from the bench.
from the bench.
They're already
They've
making
already
those
made it-
decisions.
They've
They're all
already made Trump
heritage,
a
yeah.
veritable dictator where he cannot be held
Immunity.
accountable by the rule of
immunity
law.
decision.
You know, I had a hard time saying that he should be held responsible for everything, because if that's the case, if we go to war,
There's
He-
there's it's
there's got to
there's-
be a
there-
line that says,
there's always a
Congress
line
has
Yeah, but
about
the way, what
authority.
they said was basically anything that can be plausibly
An official
considered
act.
an official act of the presidency.
he should have immunity.
He should have not just immunity from or not just immunity from that act, but also immunity from having the fact that he did that be used in the context of trying him for something unofficial that he did,
Well,
like
you have
bribery.
to, because otherwise you could go after Biden saying you approve sending bombs to Israel that killed
yeah.
Palestinians.
Well,
But that has always been considered an official act. What has not
Right.
always been considered an official act is holding a rally and then sending your bloodthirsty followers to the Capitol to ransack it. I mean,
Or sending the military out to combat a peaceful protest
right.
because you don't agree with
but
their
what was that
protesting.
legal term, posse comitatus?
yeah, but they plan to ignore that too.
Yeah.
And what about
You know, I hear
what
that,
about
but-
the documents that he took? They're going to give
Well,
him immunity.
The
from
Supreme
that,
Court
too.
has already shown that they will take up any case regarding Trump and rule in his favor.
Doesn't matter if it's
They might not give him 100%, but they'll at least give him 90% of what he wants.
which is dangerous.
no.
Is
It's
that how
really
it
it's
plays
really
out?
frightening. We're talking about embedding these people, and it's at the local level too. Like you're seeing school committees, you're seeing library trustees. I mean, they're banning books. This is
It's
they're
already
trying.
happening.
This whole "Make America Great Again." It's making America go back in time, and people are not going to have it. We're not going to go back to that, and it's just. I just don't even understand the thought process. And meanwhile, while we're fighting amongst ourselves, the wealthy are getting wealthier, and we're crying about milk and gas. Cry about the fact that wealthy people, if they just actually paid their fair share of taxes, none of that burden would be on us.
Now, I'm stuck on that because I have a hard time going to somebody who paid $20, $30 million in taxes saying you're not paying your fair share.
What percentage of their income was that?
But again,
that's-
People are
just it.
making billions.
how many people do you know that pay 10 million in taxes?
It doesn't matter. If they're making $2 billion and they pay $20 million, am
Yeah.
I supposed to cry about that?
Yeah. It
No,
doesn't
am I
affect
supposed to
them at all.
care?
Yes.
Yeah, because it
Why?
impacts us.
Here's why. They'll take the money that they are not taxed on and they will use it to buy politicians.
Yeah.
And they've been doing that, thanks to the Supreme Court, for
Citizens
the
United.
last, because of Citizens United, the McCutcheon
20
case, and all
years
the
it's
others.
been now,
They've essentially legalized bribery.
pretty much.
They've
But don't
already
we
been
do the
taking
same
bribery
thing
themselves.
through our unions?
Hmm?
The unions just try to keep up, just to have some lobbyists and get a voice at the table. Tell them I'm not here.
No,
We're setting
it's-
off his sugar.
It's my sugar saying that I'm not behaving myself.
Uh-oh. Do you need some orange juice?
No, I just need to drink some water and behave.
Okay.
The unions spend a fraction of billionaire money
Oh, yeah.
every election. It's a small fraction. If you look at all, if you look at just what the parties get and what they spend, yes, unions are fairly significant on the Democratic side. But if you look at all the super PACs and all the other all this hidden money
All the
that's
dark
lurking
money.
in the background. Right now, right-wing billionaires have $6 billion ready to go for the last 2 months of this election that they're going to spend. So get
But
ready
yet,
for that.
Maybe
Elon
I'm wrong,
Musk,
but I
let's not
read
forget
that
that.
Kamala's raised tens of millions of dollars.
From average everyday Americans, yes, but it's still not the same as being able to raise unlimited amounts of money from billionaires, even foreign billionaires, who can then throw their money into our elections. And so,
It's very
It's just
uneven.
the problem I have is when we talk about percentages, that you should be paying the same percentage. I can't go to Shaw's and say, I'd like to buy some bread. Here's the percentage I pay.
Well, that's a commodity.
That's not tax.
I look at it as a, what's the best for society? Is it good that we have someone who can earn $1 billion or $7 billion a year, several $billion a year? Is that a good thing for society? And my answer is obviously no. It's silly. Nobody can earn $1 billion. Nobody can earn $20 billion.
But where do you draw the line? Because I always got a kick out of the rich, the definition of the rich. To me, the definition of the rich is somebody who makes $1 more than I do. You can tax them because they're rich.
I think you can come up with a reasonable formula where you can figure out what is considered a reasonable amount for a wealthy person in our society to have.
Well, didn't we just pass that fair share tax with anybody making over a certain amount, percentages increase? And they did that in the 50s, didn't they, during Eisenhower's
There was a
time?
higher percentage of taxes.
We went,
before.
you
And we
mean
built-
the millionaire's tax? If
Well,
you're making
there
more
were
than a
much
million a
higher
year.
marginal
Like
rates
28%
of income tax in those years.
Yeah, and I hope
but
that-
there were also more loopholes.
There were a lot of loopholes, and Kennedy closed a lot of loopholes in the 60s, but lowered the rate to like 74%. But even then, you look at the rates back then, nobody actually paid the 74%, but that's largely because the wealthy didn't take huge salaries, and they didn't get a lot of stock options like they had a lot of stock, but they didn't get stock options like they do now in corporate America. And so they would take the money, and instead of giving themselves big salaries, they would reinvest in their company. They would do R&D.
Well, that's before a lot of the CFOs and the bean counters took over a lot of the companies and, started looking at the bottom line and then the next quarter.
But
And that-
see, I'm okay with Rand making $1 million.
I'm
If
okay
it's
with
all-
that too.
If it's all in stock options.
you don't,
Fair price stock options, because that means your stockholders made out really well. What bothers me is this incestuous relationship between the C-suite and the compensation committee.
Right.
When you see a company's stock value, their market value gone down, and you see a 20-30% increase in pay for the C-suite.
Yeah, and that is often effectively corrupt because one group's board of directors is the other group's C-suite,
Sure.
and
Yes.
and they're all
scratch each other's
they're all
back.
just scratching each other's back, and it didn't used to be completely like that. I don't know the history of this very well, but I think that back in the 60s, I think about I was living in Michigan at the time, and it didn't seem to me that the top managers of the big three auto companies were being paid the kinds of mind-boggling amounts that
Yeah, but
we
look
now
at Lee
get.
Iacocca.
Even though those were different dollars.
He
back
made
then.
a fortune when Chrysler went down, and he said, I'm going to take no salary, or took $1.
Yeah, I'm going
Right.
to pay for
And I'm going to take everything else in options.
right.
He turned that company around. The stockholders got their value back. He made a fortune. Sorry, Glenn, I got no problem with him sharing in the fortune he raised.
but then he did the work around it. It's not like he just,
Yeah, but that's my point. If you raise the value of your company, yeah, you can have a piece of it. If you don't, though, I'd like to see those salaries cut.
Yeah, I got a problem with the stock buybacks. I mean, that's
Or maybe
another
a
thing
change
that
of
has to go
personnel.
away.
Well,
And-
that's a loophole that when you're buying back stock, what value are you really bringing except to short-term stockholders?
Right, none.
no.
Right.
Right.
So that has to go away. And the other thing I think, what was the other thing I wanted to bring up? I'll come back to it.
Well, didn't they start having that attitude like that Gordon Gekko, greed is good,
Yeah.
right around
Yeah.
the 80s or
The-
70s?
well,
and,
Oh, yeah.
Well, there was actually a theory of that said that the sole purpose of the corporation was to enrich its stockholders, and before that, there was a somewhat more
That you had
broad-based
some
definition.
responsibility
You
to
had there was such a
society.
thing as being a good corporate citizen, and there was such a thing as being a good neighbor to the people who were hosting your
And if you look at
plants and,
companies
uh,
locally,
yeah.
I hope that Milford Federal Savings
Mm-hmm.
does well forever.
Mm-hmm.
Because every time I turn around on a baseball team, on a Girl Scout, on all these social programs,
Mm-hmm. They're in there pitching.
they're donating money.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's a good corporate citizen. They're taking some of the money that they could dole out to stockholders and helping the community.
You know, would be a really good corporate citizen. Pay your damn taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But they are.
Because what that is just advertising.
No, but Lauren, they
The
are.
PR.
Until you change.
I'm
I
not
don't-
saying Milford Federal's
No,
not
no,
paying
not
their
Milford
taxes. I'm
Fed.
talking about corporate,
Corporate.
large billionaires.
If they aren't paying the taxes that they legally owe, they can
well,
be
but that's the
prosecuted.
problem.
Change
lot
the
of them are
laws.
not.
Yeah.
Of course.
But
Well,
well,
change
yeah,
laws.
easy.
But who-
Change the
Well,
laws.
you got to
We
get
can't
somebody
pass
in
simple
office that's
stuff.
going to allow you to change the laws, and this is where the difference is between Democrat versus Republican. Republicans, I got mine, you get yours. Democrats, it's more, let's be equitable, generally
let's
speaking.
do the right thing for everybody. I mean,
Speaking-
nobody wants to pay their taxes. Well, taxes is what paves roads and builds bridges.
It's the
and,
dues for being in a civilized society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to bring up was the tax rate on
Oh,
stock, not just long-term capital gains, but carried interest,
carried interest. That's the one. Yeah.
which is really absurd, where hedge fund managers are able to consider their the work they do for their clients as and the money they get back.
Well, the exemptions for hedge fund managers are silly.
They're crazy.
That just got, I don't want to be cold about it, but that was bought and paid for.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Shocking, really.
And it would have gone away in Biden's first 2 years had it not been for Kirsten Sinema, who decided that she would not help get rid of that loophole.
The senator from Davos.
Yeah.
But see, you've got a lot of stuff that I keep hearing is going to change. Would have gone away. Well, it's been 3.5 years.
You had Congress that wasn't working with him, too. I mean,
Well,
there was a lot of work.
The last 2 years, obviously Republicans run the House. And
Yeah.
they have no interest in getting rid of carried interest or any of the other massive loopholes for corporations or the
They
wealthy.
won't even pass their own damn bills.
Well, they
get
negotiate.
talking
They don't
about
even
the
have
immigration
bills.
bill. I don't want to bring up immigration. We've talked that to death, but I'm just saying.
They
That's
had
right.
a
The immigration
bipartisan
bill that-
bill.
And Trump said, "I don't want you to pass it. Kill it because it'll mess with my campaign."
And now they're bitching about the fact that we didn't do anything with the
And then they
border.
turn
I
around
know,
and say,
it's
"Well,
like-
you Democrats didn't do anything." It
Let-
was mostly Republican policies in
So,
that bill.
so let's, real quick, too, it's going to take a shift to talk about Boeing.
Mm.
Now, I just recently read that they're crying that they could go under and they need help.
Well, you make airplanes where the doors pop out, and I mean,
So all of a sudden now,
didn't
and I'll
used
be,
to be
I'll
like
be
that.
damned if we're going to bail them out after their oversight, they cut corners for years. They have had the best reputation for years.
well, now
If
those
it's not
two
Boeing, I'm
astronauts
not
are
going.
stranded
And,
in space.
Yeah.
But now we bailed out the automotive industry. Thank God. A lot of good union jobs got saved.
we bailed out the
the
airlines.
banks.
We bailed out the banks.
Mm-hmm.
Is Boeing that different?
Well,
They're the number one export
Do we reward,
company.
though, bad behavior for
Well,
a company?
The tricky thing here is Boeing is a very important military contractor.
That's scary, too, given their reputation
Which is
now.
and now they have this cost cutting. Let's let garbage out the door. Apparently, but we actually can't. In a sense, I mean, it may be the case from a national security point of view that we can't actually not have Boeing, but we also need Boeing to make a quality product again. So how do we get there?
Yeah, but aren't
know?
you mixing, we need Boeing civilian with Boeing military?
Possibly, but
Because I was glad to see some of the house cleaning at Boeing management.
Oh, we did need that. We
You
did
know, no
need
matter
that.
what
I
you
hope it
say,
carries
it
over
happened
into the
under their
military.
watch, and you can come up with 100 reasons why it wasn't their fault. the global economy was driving the,
No.
look, it happened under your watch.
No, you know. if
Boeing
the-
was bought out by another company who was
Martha
known.
Douglas, right, is it MacArthur with
Ye-
Douglas?
Yeah.
They merged, didn't they?
McDonnell Douglas
Thank
and
you,
Boeing
McDonnell
merged,
Douglas,
yeah.
yeah.
They
and-
merged.
And apparently, when you merge two companies, you try to merge the corporate cultures, and sometimes you end up with something that doesn't work all that well.
Yeah, Boeing's
And-
corporate culture is what lost out, and the other culture was, more slapdash about product development and didn't take safety as seriously, and had a history of major problems in production, and they passed that along to Boeing. So now Boeing is eating it because of that. That the
But the
management
market is
expectations.
penalizing them. If you think about
Well,
it,
now it is,
Airbus
yeah.
now makes more sales than Boeing. You can't tell me that's not because of quality.
It probably is.
It probably is to a large degree, and I guess people have lost faith in Boeing. But I think the other part of the problem here is that Boeing has become this enormous conglomeration that wears so many hats that we should be able to let them fail, and maybe we can't because of everything that we've talked about. That they're a
Well,
military contractor and they're very important.
There's a reason that when you look at military projects, large military projects, that they're made, the product, the jets, the pieces are made in 48 states.
That's right. They're
And there's it's not efficiency.
no,
It's the fact that now if you go to cut that program,
A lot of jobs.
well, it's
a
the
lot
Congress.
of senators,
It's
Yeah.
the congressman. It's
forget the jobs. I mean, I'd love to believe they're worried about the employees on the floor.
But they're not.
It's the senators that would lose out.
Well, they're worried about the employees because they're the senators that represent
Right.
those employees,
Yep.
and et cetera, et cetera.
Which reminds me, we forgot to talk about the state legislature not getting anything.
Yeah, we've got a few minutes.
Yeah.
Seemed like every year or every other year when the session's coming to an end, there's an acceleration.
Flurry of activity.
And I don't feel bad when they say they had to work till midnight.
You
In
had
the
all
corporate
year.
world, more than once I've had to work till midnight. But what's your opinion of what's going on?
I
Well,
I recommend that every citizen should take a look at the Mass Legislature website and familiarize themselves with it, because I had to do it as part of a project with the Lawyers for Good Government, and I didn't, I would look at it, but I never really understood it. You actually have to navigate that website, learn it,
right.
and
And
then
it's malegislature.gov.
I believe, yeah,
Yeah.
just Google Mass Legislature, you'll find it. And if there's something you're interested in, a bill, whatever, you can put it in the search bar. Like for me, it was hybrid meetings, and I was following that bill, having hybrid meetings be required in all the towns in the state. And I thought, it was going really well. There was a lot of advocates behind it. A lot of town people wanted to be able to make the decision individually. The disability advocates were like, no, it should be required because it's more of a civil rights issue, a disability access issue. And I really thought it had a lot of momentum. Did it pass? Nope. Just slid right into the new session. And that happened with so many bills that actually had I thought, a decent chance of passing.
And lots of people behind them.
Yeah.
Lots of organizations
But
sponsoring
Lauren,
them.
I know you want more, but you've had an effect in local government.
And that's a fair point. That's
It's
a fair
not what-
point.
Nirvana that every subcommittee, every meeting is fully interactive. But starting in September, we'll take our committee, the FinCom. In the job description of the new clerk is that she will run the Zoom meetings.
And I appreciate that. I'm grateful for that.
But
But it
that's a
wouldn't have
huge step.
happened if I wasn't such a huge pain in your ass and everybody else's ass. And you need advocates in order to get things done.
right.
And the advocates rely on their state reps and their state senators to get things done. And I'm not complaining about our state rep and our state senator. I think they're both great. But the problem is that there's a lot of machinations that go on at the state legislature that are behind closed doors. There's very little transparency. And then when you try to get involved in the process, I've testified at hearings and stuff like that. I've written letters, I've written emails, I've set up meetings. You feel like you're doing all this stuff. And I'm not just talking about the hybrid issue, I'm just talking about in general.
Sure.
And then stuff either just dies, it goes to study. And I know there's only so much people can do, and I know there's negotiations that have to take place, but for God's sakes, we get a Democratic governor and a primarily Democratic state legislature. Why can't we get more accomplished? Other states are banging out legislation right and left, and then when we do pass stuff, we're patting ourselves on the back on how great it is. For example, the HERO Act. Everybody's like, oh, this is a wonderful thing for veterans. Okay, I read it. I don't really understand what they're getting. Like, I was hoping that the definition of veteran would be more expansive, because I think that there are some people who serve this country that maybe didn't get granted the status as veteran that maybe they should have. That's why I was looking at it.
Yeah.
I don't think they're getting that. So there's a lot of like, aren't we so wonderful? Well, what did you really do,
How
though?
much
And could
really
it
was
have been more?
accomplished,
Because then there's a lot of negotiations that go on with that. Loudest voices in the room, the smallest contingent at the legislature.
Can always be more.
And it's like, why?
And I think, the question of why haven't we budgeted enough money for interactive remote participation on every committee? Okay, well, you look at the cost of that and you say, okay, that comes out of school. 60% of the money we spend on remote comes out of the school budget.
I look at it like that should be the same money that goes to things like wheelchair ramps
Yeah.
and things like that. It's access.
Yeah.
If it happens to benefit people beyond the disability community, and it's been shown that that's true, even better. Because what you would want in government is a lot of participation and a lot of transparency. And what I see in government is the people that are in power frequently do not want
you
transparency.
think
The last
about
thing
it.
they want, in general.
Yeah, that's literally
Our
the last thing
committee
they
is one
want.
of the few that has invitation to speak at every FinCom meeting last year.
Yep.
Year before, at least for the last 4 years that I was chair.
Yep.
And people have said, why do you do that? Well, because I think it's the right thing to do. Well, you don't have to legally do it. You're right. And some people will take advantage of it. But overall, when I weigh the advantages versus disadvantages, I believed in it. So we did it.
No, it's the right thing
Yeah.
to do. And it's not like we're
So-
giving people unlimited amounts of time to speak.
Yeah.
But if
Well,
somebody
even
has
the
an
open
issue,
meeting law, we're getting much better at following the open meeting law so that people do have time. You no longer can come into a meeting and just talk about something and have a discussion. Has to be on the agenda. And people have called and said, why are you doing that? You're delaying it intentionally. No, I wasn't. I was making it so that you had a month's warning that it's coming up. And
so
if
the
you-
public has the opportunity
chance to-
yeah.
Right.
well,
Okay, sorry.
sorry, but we're at the point where we got to stop again. And hopefully in about 6 weeks, we'll get back together and we'll be closer and we can discuss policies for the presidential race. And as always, to our 6 loyal viewers, thank you for joining us. May God bless. May tomorrow be a better day than today. Thank you.